Welcome to the Crimson Engine. My name is Rubidium. Today we are talking about the evolution of cameras and what the future holds in the cinema camera market and what new technologies we are going to probably see getting integrated into future Canon cinema cameras, RE, all the brands that make this stuff. Because for the past 5 years, we have seen sort of a stalling of new features. Like they've become slower and more incremental in their improvements. And there is a gap that cinema cameras have to jump across. And there is a lot of resistance to that jump. But we're going to explore it today and explain why pretty much the next logical step or the new innovation in cinema cameras is going to challenge a lot of people, is going to involve a lot of new technologies in new ways, and there's going to be a lot of resistance, but there's also going to be a huge amount of benefit. So let's dive in. For the past 15 years, since the first Red 1 camera, the Arri Alexa Classic, the Canon C100, cinema cameras have been trying to mimic film cameras. That has always been the 35mm film camera has been the standard, and that's what shot the classic films, and that's what camera companies have been trying to replicate. They've been trying to give you cinema camera, film camera quality without the chemical processes that made it so expensive, so unpredictable, that made it such a hassle to use. And I honestly think they're pretty close. The Alexa 35, the C500, C400 are now 90% of the way to film. Yes, they don't have the grain or the emulsion or that particular sort of secret sauce, but you're able to add a lot of that in post with digital grain or the color grade. So they are, I think, functionally 90% there. And instead of having to change your magazine every 10 minutes and having to send it off to the lab and look at dailies, then rushes the next day, you're able to see exactly what you want on the camera as you shoot it. So huge advances there. For the last couple of years, like the difference between the C500 Mark II, which I have, and the C400, there was no real new technology. Like they changed the cables from proprietary to USB-C. The main improvement was that it was half the price. You go from a $15,000 camera in 2020 to a $7,000 camera in 2025, adjusted for the pretty radical inflation we've had because of COVID. It is less than half the price. So you're getting the same features for cheaper. So it makes it more accessible, which is fantastic. We haven't really seen a new paradigm of cinema camera, and I think that is what is around the corner. We have seen a sort of kind of shift to medium format, as I covered on a couple of podcasts ago. We have seen a sort of small shift with the Alexa 35 to high dynamic range. This comes with the things I talked about, much bigger cameras, much more voltage, bigger batteries, less shooting time. And I think there are specialist uses for high dynamic range, and especially when you're shooting outside with deep shadows and really bright brights. Yes, you can use a high dynamic range camera to bridge those two and make that image either not clip in the highs or not crush in the lows. The same with ultra high frame rates, going from 120 up to 500 to 1000 to 2000. There are, you don't need a camera that does that every single day. It doesn't make any sense to have that technology and pay for the price of the camera, the computational power in the camera, the crazy storage that needs for something you use 1% of the time. It makes more sense to hire a specialized camera for super high frame rates when you need it, like they did in the film days, and leave it at that. because it is, once you shoot super high frame rates, you realize that it's very hard to cut into your scene, right? Like if you shoot someone walking down a path at 1,000 frames a second, every step takes 10 seconds. So they're best used for, super slow-mo bullet time sort of stuff. So what does that leave us? What new integrations can cameras have so that they actually make a difference to the type of images you can create, the speed that you can create them at, how cheap you can create them, how fewer people you can use to create them. I think the big gap that cameras have to jump is to go from being their own individual department within a film to being far more integrated and a piece of the overall VFX post-production pipeline. So you see this, a couple of weeks ago I did a green screen shoot, and I was able to use OBS, which is free software, to basically pre-visualize my green screen. I fed the HDMI from the camera, I was using the C400, into my laptop, and then pre-matted the green screen with the background that I was going to use. So I was able to light to the background and get a much better fit than I would have normally. The idea that you need to use a third-party app for this seems a little strange to me, because most cinematographers now, almost all movies are shooting log. No one's shooting Rec 709. That's amateur stuff. So if you're shooting log, you know that the footage that you're shooting has to be graded. So it's not going from the camera to the movie theater or the TV or the phone. It's going from the camera to DaVinci Resolve or whatever post-production software you're using, and then being manipulated and going to the end user. Right now, cameras are built in ways that they give very little help and information to the NLE, the post-production software. They hold metadata for the camera, the maybe the lens length, but that's it. Whereas to be able to key your scene or match move your scene, meaning put digital objects in the scene in post, you need to then track the footage that you're using, which takes time. It's a hassle. It's not that accurate. The camera is capable of recording all of that information. The camera is able to, while it's shooting, 23, 25 frames per second, capture, what lens you're on, where the camera is in space, what the focal length of the camera, meaning what the camera is focused on and what it's not focused on. So right now you have to generate a depth map in Resolve, and it has got a lot better at doing it, which means that you're able to, single out the subject from the background. But the camera should be able to do that. The camera, knows what you're focusing on because it's doing that focusing, and it's, some cameras, it's even taking control of that focus. So it knows exactly to the millimeter how far away your camera is focused. But it is capable of generating an alpha or a depth map and saving it with the file, or saving that into the file that it's creating from the images. But no camera that I know of does that. There is an iPhone app called Polycam, which uses the stereoscopic information from your iPhone, meaning using the multiple cameras at once, to generate a 3D view of what it is that you're shooting. So you can use your iPhone as a 3D scanner. It would be very easy to add a second sensor or some kind of laser or depth map to a cinema camera, so that as you're shooting, it's also generating a 3D scene of the environment that you're in, so that you can then add your footage and that 3D environment to post-production software and just drop in or use AI to generate anything you want in the background. You could probably even do this live with your camera so that you can preview it, just like I did with the green screen and the background. There are plenty of other, some of these are called meta capture or light filled systems, where you're using the camera to capture both the image that you're going to use and a sense of the environment. No camera manufacturer that I know of is even talking about this, and yet it would speed up post-production so much, and bring the kind of tools that only high-end Hollywood feature films have into a prosumer space much quicker. And it really is not inventing some crazy new sensor technology or some crazy new battery technology. It is just using the software that's already on most people's phones and incorporating them into a cinema camera to give you so many more options in post. The reason I don't think this is happening is that the camera manufacturers believe, probably rightly, that the traditional cinematographers, the people who are buying these cameras, don't understand or want to concern themselves with the post-production process in this way. They don't want to be, they want to focus on what they traditionally focus on, being prep on set, and once they wrap, the cinematographer's job is done. It's up to the director and the producer and the VFX team to create these things. And yet it makes it, that is such an outdated paradigm for what the process of filmmaking is. And I think with AI getting so good so quickly, there really has to be more integration in the filmmaking process. I mean, I would say, especially for, it's less true with ARRI, where you have rental houses buying these things and big time DPs buying these things. But with Canon and Sony and Panasonic and Nikon, it really is owner operators. It really is people who are buying these cameras to film their own movies and tell their own stories. Most of the people that are shooting on, the C400, C80, C70, R5C, which I'm shooting this on, most of these people are doing their own post-production. So why not give them tools to make their own job easier? They're not worried about, crossover with VFX and somehow polluting the traditional role of cinematographer. They're worried about how they can make the best images for the least amount of time. You see a little bit of this in what's it called, virtual production stages, where you have the dynamic stage being generated in the background, and for the camera to be able to give the information, it needs to be mapped. It needs to have all these weird little doodads added to the top of it so that another set of cameras in the space can track it in real time and tell the computer that's generating the background what the camera needs to be seeing. Now, that seems crazy to me because as that gets more and more, gives that more and more potential, and these screens get cheaper and cheaper, I'm sure in a couple of years you'll be able to get a 6x6 background stage for under 10 grand. We want we don't want to have to add more things to a cinema camera. If this is the way that cinema is going to be shot more and more, then it makes sense for us to incorporate that technology into the cinema cameras that are being made. So that means a gyroscope and much more communication with the lens of exactly what the focal depth is, exactly what the movement is. And that seems really exciting. It seems as though, even without that, the idea that you wouldn't necessarily need a green screen, that you would just go outside and shoot or go into a studio and shoot, and then be able to take the footage that you have with a 3D environment that the camera has generated, drop them together into some kind of project, and then just add as many background objects or take away background objects that you want. This is sort of the brave new world. This is the making cameras not in the way to try and replicate a Super 35 film camera, but creating cameras that are far more sort of the start of a process that we know is going to go through a computer. And so making the camera talk both in real time to a computer if you're shooting on a virtual backlot, or creating as much data as possible so that that camera, when the footage gets to a computer, the computer knows everything that the camera saw, everything, all the information that the computer needs to build the scene and enhance the scene as much as it can. I think that the company that's most likely to do that first is Blackmagic, because they have the Resolve technology. They develop Resolve, and it's one of their biggest products. So probably you'll see it from them first. But it would be great if Canon got on board, and rather than catching up to other camera manufacturers like ARRI, that it innovated and integrated those tools and allowed that to be the next big step that they take with their cinema range. That would be awesome. This is it is exciting times to create as a filmmaker. It is amazing times to be telling stories, because never in history has a storyteller had access to this many resources, this much technology. The new Google AI generator is within a hair of photorealistic, instantaneous, almost free abilities to generate with a great deal of control in AI. So if cameras are going to maintain its supremacy in filmmaking as real people, then I think we need to see a ton more tools integrated into cameras. For the last 5 years, very little has come out of the camera world, whereas the last 5 years have been a seismic shift in AI and computer generated stuff. It remains to be seen what the future holds, but I am about to launch another course, a whole nother area of my I guess teaching career, which is going to be story focused. So it does not matter if you're a Canon, Sony shooter. It doesn't matter if you're a screenwriter, a poet, a novelist, or just trying to tell your own story better to get things moving forward. I will have an announcement in the next couple of weeks about where you can go and check it out. But I'm really proud of it. I think it's one of the best things I've ever done. And hope that helps someone out there. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time.